Hey everybody, we are live. So excited to be able to have you on here with us today. In the chat here, because I want to see who's jumping in. I can see all the little eyeball things showing up as you guys are popping in from StreamYard, YouTube, Facebook, or wherever you're coming in from, LinkedIn. Definitely type in the chat, say hi. And here's most important too. And even if you're watching the recording, I want this to be a big question you're going to be asking yourself as we get started is, what do I really want? What do I want? You're like, well, what do you mean? What do I want? I'm like, I mean, why are you here? Like, what is it you're hoping to really get? Go ahead and type that in the chat here for those of you that are live. Even if you're not on live, type it in anyways. Hopefully, we can actually deliver on that for you in the future, right? But I am super excited about today because I put a lot of time and effort into this. I'm going to expose a lot, right? We're definitely going to expose some things here because if you're the kind of person I think you are, and we really cater this to some of you that are really like are pretty much like many of our clients, the people that we talk to every day. And this is the thing is like you might make a good income, but you know deep down, you know, kind of in the back recesses of your mind, even if everything looks great on the surface, even to your own family, maybe it looks great, but to you, maybe you're like, is it enough? You know, am I always going to be hustling and working? Am I always going to be working this business? Am I always be working this job? You know, when does it end? When do I actually get my time and my life back? And that's something that I understand firsthand as well, because I've been there, right? I've been the person that's made great money, but then I'm wondering, yeah, but so what? You know, even if you make six figures a year or multiple six figures a year, where does it end? Where do you have to keep going? David, I appreciate you saying, you know, you're curious to see what the silent killer is. That's what we're going to talk about today is what's this destroyer? And I'm going to really pull back the curtain. I'm going to go back to my financial advisor days and expose what's really happening there, right? Because there is a lot of crap that's in there. So again, for those of you jumping on, because I see more of you jumping on right now, please type in here like what you really want. Like what is it you really want to make sure you get from today as we're talking about this? Because here's what I'm going to show you, right? Is that if I can show you how you can create financial freedom without a lot of time, with less money than you think you need, and without a lot of financial training, just like hundreds of our clients have done, and myself over the last 19 years, you know, is that something you would want to see how it's done? Just so you know, I can't wait till next year when I can finally say this has worked over the last 20 years because it was 2006 when it worked for myself as well. So, all right, I know Curtis said here, like one of those big fears, of course, the government, right? That's something I'm actually going to be bringing up as well. Christopher, he's of course asking like, what can you do to help explain this to your wife, who's also a high earner, to help her understand how he can get better? I'm actually going to share this because it's a lot here, but what can you do to explain to your wife, who's a high income earner, to help her understand how we can do better and help her feel like we'll be fine financially? You know what? You are not alone. I bet you there's probably several other people in here right now saying, yes, how do I get my spouse on board? Hey, well, hopefully that's what we're going to talk about today, because here's what we're going to cover is one, what are the lies you've been fed, really fed your entire life, or at least your entire adult life, about money and how it's supposed to work, but finding out that you've been lied to because that's how these financial companies make their money. Also, what it's going to take to be financially free in less than 10 years. I'm not making this promise for everybody, but there are many, many of our clients that have actually been able to do this very same thing. And of course, you know, what investments does your financial advisor not want you to know about? What are they scared that you might discover? Because you'll find out that these financial advisors, like just about any financial advisor, is obsolete. They are not needed in your life for the most part. All right. Again, not to bag on financial advisors, but you're going to realize pretty soon that it's just the same old boring crap, right? I mean, how many of you guys have heard everything from spend nothing, save it forever, you know, save it in, you know, stocks or mutual funds, and then hopefully someday you'll have something. That's the thing I want to get past. I want to be able to blow past this and really find a solution that actually works. Because I realized I was that salesman in a suit. I was that financial advisor over 20 years ago, and I was feeding you those same lies. And that's what I want to expose today. Just so you know, as a bonus, we're going to talk about it in a little bit. The passive income calculator is actually something you can use to figure out how much passive income you could create in the next 12 months. All right. So I mentioned I was a financial advisor back in the early 2000s. I actually became a financial advisor because one, I was hoping if I could learn about money for myself, that would be great. Two, I was actually doing this because my plan was to become a business consultant. I figured I should start some real life business and get that experience so then I could become a better business consultant for other companies I go to work in. Well, this was the first opportunity that came up. And more importantly, I realized that the thing that would help me is if I can not only learn about money for myself, but maybe I can give my dad some of his life back. Because like I said, like I'm saying here, he's really my inspiration for here. Because you understand, my dad growing up, this is me when I was 17 years old. This is like just over 30 years ago, in fact. With my dad, he was always like, we can't afford this. What do you think I am? Made of money? Money does not grow on trees. Like I don't have the cash to do all this stuff. I remember I was shocked when he told me, when I was a little kid, this is in the 80s, right? When he said, "Yeah, Chris, I make over $100 a day." I said, "That's impossible. No way. You're not rich." To me, $100 a day seemed rich. Now you do the math, you're like, "Oh, that's $2,500 a week." Okay. Or no, that's not even $2,500 a week. That's like less than 2,500 a month, right? That's like $500 a week. But I realize now, like, okay, that's in the 80s. He did eventually make more money. He was a good, solid middle class, hard worker, but we always seemed like we were broke. And I remember the worst thing was that he would always tell me, he's like, "Chris, I think that this job will literally kill me. The stress from my work, the stress from having to show up to work every day. And even as I work hard, if I become a little bit successful, the company then cuts me back or does something where they rezone my area or make me start over again. So I have to start from scratch. And so he always felt like he was out of control, that he didn't have real control over his life and circumstances. This guy had strokes in his 40s, especially after my parents divorced. He had a stroke. And then he even had heart attacks in his 50s. Guys, I was in college, home for the summer, when all of a sudden I came home from work one day and my dad was literally being rushed off into an ambulance because he was having a heart attack, telling me, "Hey, there's a can of money up on the top of my dresser if you need to get cash, in case I don't make it back." I mean, I heard this stuff from him when he wasn't much older than the age I am right now, right? Because he again believed that he would have to keep working. He was saving like crazy, but he had to keep working. And so that inspired me. I said, if I can give my dad even a little bit of his life back, wouldn't that be worth it? And so after 4 years, I was a financial advisor. I started gaining that confidence. I was indoctrinated. I drank the Kool-Aid, right? I wore the suits. I did all that kind of crap. Now I'm not even wearing that. Now I'm wearing t-shirts all the time, right? But I wore the suits. I try to impress you and show you about my vast financial knowledge of the stocks and mutual funds that I was selling you, right? Well, eventually my dad, we were talking on the phone. He says, "Well, Chris, when are you going to actually financially advise me?" I never thought he would ever ask me for that help because he was very private about his money. He never wanted us kids to know about how much he had. And so over Thanksgiving holiday, I went back home to Oregon, flew back home, and went to go sit down at his kitchen table, the same one he was telling me about, how do you actually, here's how you save, basically here's how we stay cheap for the rest of our lives. And I'm sitting at that table, I'm looking at all this, paperwork, all the 401ks and stuff he did. He stuffed money in there. He even got the match and everything like that, like every good boy and good girl should. He was completely debt free, including his home mortgage. So I'm looking at him, I was like, "Dad, you're debt free, no credit cards, no mortgage, nothing. You have savings." I said, "But Dad, you're 61 years old. If you want to retire today, you're going to have to hope you die in 5 or 6 years because that is when you're going to run out of money." Because even though he was such a great job saving and got his little company match from his 401k and everything else, despite all of that, it wasn't enough. Now I asked him, I said, my dad asked me, he's like, "Well, Chris, what do I do then?" And I'll tell you, I racked my brain because I'm thinking, okay, what can I do here? I was like, "We can do this annuity. But what if the market doesn't quite work out the same way? What if it's not enough to return? You've got, we could do this stock or this mutual fund. But again, if the market tanks, this is 2005 when I'm talking to him. He said, "The market tanks again, like it did in Y2K. What's going to happen to your money?" Which, by the way, 2 years later, as you guys know, market tanked even worse. And so I was lost because this is my father. I don't want to put him in a bad position, let alone my own clients. But he was probably the client I was most nervous about, the one that I wanted to make sure he succeeded. So when he asked me, I said, "Dad, I don't know. You did everything right. Everything you did is exactly what I teach all my clients. I don't know what else you can do. Honestly, you've got a paid off house, but I wouldn't invest that in the stock market. In fact, you legally can't. So I don't know what to do." When I got back home to Utah, I was frustrated as no other because the guy that inspired me to start this business wasn't financially free. And even worse, I was on the same path as him. I was the one doing the same thing. I was the one saving and trying to scrimp and save and be cheap to the point where I drove my wife nuts because of how cheap I was trying to be. And it still wasn't enough. Maybe you relate to this too. Maybe you've got good savings. Maybe you're debt free. Maybe you're like the Dave Ramsey poster child, like my dad was. Yet, when you look at the reality of the situation, you start to realize, when's it going to end? When is it ever going to be enough? That's what I want to address today, because there is hope, but it's not what it is. I'll tell you, over the next several months, I actually quit being a financial advisor. I said, I can't do this anymore. I'm a salesman in a suit. I can no longer stay in integrity and keep teaching what I know, because I know it's not working for me. It didn't work for my dad. It's really ultimately not really working for my clients, because even if they retire, they're still living on a fixed budget, trying not to run out of money too soon. And on top of that, every financial advisor I knew, everyone I knew, could not retire themselves using these mutual funds. Oh, they could retire off of the money you put with them. Yeah, they're getting that nice little stream of income, whether you make money or not, but they cannot retire themselves. And that's when I knew it is over. I cannot do this again. I was a liar and a deceiver. I didn't even know it, but I was lying to people, feeding them the same lies, the same BS that you've been taught your whole lives about money too. Eventually, I started doing something different. I started focusing on things that actually generate cash flow, passive income. Was able to get out of that crappy little house that I was showing you there before, and moved into a better one. And then eventually, of course, with the recession and everything, I got to live in a van down by the river. But no, that's a different story for another time. I'm here to tell you guys that it's not about how much money you save. It's about what cash flow, what kind of income do you earn off of that savings? That is the key. Cash flow is what creates real financial freedom. Not about the money you've saved up and accumulated with compounding interest. It's about cash flow. Right? There's your van down by the river. So I'll tell you, our typical client finds at least $20,000 in the first year alone. That's money that they've either freed up and or created in passive income. And even better, that income can grow year after year after year after year. It doesn't end. I mean, imagine, even if it was only $20,000 in 5 years, guys, that's over $100,000 of extra money you've got in your possession that you may not have had otherwise, right? But it's going to require you guys to have a little bit different of a view. This is where it's like Matrix, right? It's really either you take the red pill or you take the blue pill. You either go back to your life, you go back to living, believing these lies, or you wake up to something different. And I'm going to talk about what that is now. So here's the problem, guys. If you haven't already had enough problems, less cash flow creates more stress. If you haven't figured that out already, when you don't have enough money coming in. Now, again, if you're a high income earner, the money's coming in just fine. But you have to keep working. You have to keep putting in your labor. You have to keep trading time for dollars, or your extra energy in your life for dollars, like my dad did, just to keep that income going. And yeah, that life can seem great, whether you're living a very cheap lifestyle or even living well. We've got plenty of dentists that living easily on $20,000, $30,000 a month. Yet, really in the back of your mind, you're kind of wondering, when will it stop? Right? When will I be forced to stop? What if something happens to me right now where I can't keep working anymore? What will happen to my life? I'll tell you, a lot of business owners I've talked to make millions of dollars. And I ask them that question: if your business stopped today, we had another COVID shutdown or whatever it might be, right? Or something happens to your business, what would you be doing? And every time, unless they do what we're talking about here today, they'll say, I'm screwed. Like, I would be hustling, trying to find another way to generate income. Like, my family would be just as broke as everybody else. It's not about the income, guys. And it's not even about putting away that income, saving for a rainy day, although that's important too. It's about how you actually get that money working for you so that you don't have to keep working for that money. And then here's the thing, guys. When you have that kind of scarcity, it doesn't just affect you, does it? You pass on generations. And maybe you were that kid. Maybe you were the one that heard your parents arguing and fighting about money. Maybe you were the one that saw that happening. And maybe without you knowing it or not, whether you know it or not, it's still passing on to the next generation. Can you stop that? Maybe it's your spouse, like Christopher was saying, right? Like, maybe it's a spouse. Maybe you're like not getting them quite on board. How do you get them to that abundant mindset versus living in that scarcity? And it's hard because we've got inflation that's still persistent. Yeah, it's come down a little bit. Whoop-de freaking do. They tell you it's only gone up like 25% in the last 5 years. But in reality, we all know it's more, don't we? You try to hire contractors for stuff, you're paying at least double the price. Almost everything feels like it's almost double the price, if not 50% double. Heck, your eggs suck right now, don't they? Right? I mean, we got so many things happening. And yeah, you might have got the average 4% raise last year, which was the average for workers. But was that enough? Is the inflation rate that the government is telling you, is it really the truth? Come on. We all know better, don't we? We also got interest rates, right? They went up, and that didn't make anything easier, especially if you're trying to have a house, with a mortgage on it. And if you might have a mortgage already at 2 or 3%, you're thinking, I can't do anything. I can't move. I'm stuck here because if I try to go to another house, I'm going to pay a higher payment for a lesser home, right? You've also got the debt of the national debt that's been going up like crazy. Elon Musk's been tweeting about stuff about $1,200 for coffee cups and things like that, and all this kind of stuff that we're going trillions of dollars in debt. And where do they get that money? Hey, if worst case the government needs to get the money, why not go after your IRAs and 401ks? Because they can change the rules whenever they want, can't they? Right? We got Warren Buffett. He's actually selling off Bank of America and Apple stocks. He's been liquidating like crazy. He's got like over 325 billion sitting in cash, waiting for something big to happen. He is bailing out of the market. Yet we're always told to keep putting our money in the market. Are they too high? That's a real good question, right? We're not sure. Here, they actually been saying next 10 years, they're only expecting that market to average between 2.8 and 4.8% a year. You realize that there's some CDs out there that pay almost the same without all the risk and all the gambling. And you got guys out there like Dave Ramsey telling you live on rice and beans, right? And then he tells you if you just save $100 a month for the next 40 years at 12% return, you should have $1.176 million. Everybody should retire a millionaire. Nobody should be broke, right? The problem is this, guys. You just blindly take it off faith that he's telling you the right thing. But guess what? $100 a month for 40 years at 12% is not 1.176. Here's the actual calculator. It's 979,000, guys. It's not even $1 million. So even if you save the $100 a month, it's not even that. But guess what? That's not all, because you get people taking their advice or saying, hey, if this lady up at the top here, she's like, I followed your advice since really the last 30 years, and now I'm broke. What do I do? Okay. If you've been following somebody's advice for 30 years and you feel like it hasn't quite got you to where you want to go, should you keep following that advice? Wouldn't that be like the definition of insanity, is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results? This lady's insane. She's going back to him saying, it didn't work. Can you give me something else, right? This is the problem. And here are the lies that are coming out here. One, there's a 12% stock market like Dave Ramsey has been portraying for years. I taught the same thing as a financial advisor. I would show the nice little chart saying, hey, look, it's 12% a year. It's amazing. And I would show like the small cap stocks versus the large cap. A large cap could be like 10.6%. And it would be like 12.3% for the small cap stocks, right? And I would show you that, like, look, it's been that way since 2000 BC, since before man invented fire. This is the place to go. Put your money in the market right here. Problem though, here's the problem, right? Is that the market hasn't averaged that. This is the last 30 years. I just did this chart yesterday. This is updated. The average for the 30 years has been 8.74%. And just so you know, so you're aware, 85%, more than 85% of mutual funds do not even earn the same as the S&P 500. 85%. I used to always say 90%. I went to look up the numbers to see what they are today. It says about 85% of money managers didn't even make the same returns as the stock market. This right here, I mean, if that means the vast majority of you, if you're in mutual funds, you're not even getting this. Now, you might think you're smart because you got the S&P 500 index fund, and that is smarter. I'm here to show you that that's still not great, because it's still 8.74%. You might say, well, dividends get reinvested. Yeah, you might be able to add 1.5% on that. You might have averaged 10%, but this is after we've had the best market run really almost in history. Okay, guys, I don't want to say it is in history, but arguably this is the best market run in the last 15, 16 years that we've had in history. Arguably that's the case, because we've had one down year versus 15 up years in the last, since 2009. That's 16 full market years. It was March of 2009 when it started going back up. We have not seen a down year except for one little year in 2022. And still that average is only 8.74%. Here's the problem, guys. What if you did that same math with Dave Ramsey, right? Look right here. Like I remember I showed you the 979,000. If you actually only earned, in this case, 9%, right? So I say only, really 9% is more than the average of the stock market. Look, you'd have over $400,000. So when he's telling you, hey, you should have almost $1.2 million, and you find out you have a third of that, that's going to kind of piss you off. Just so you know, this is exactly the story of every American I've talked to in the last 23 years of being in this business. This is exactly what they've seen. It's overpromise, underdeliver. Also, I have an arrow there. Notice the inflation buying power, if it's only at 4%, and this is assuming the inflation is only at 4%. Arguably, it's a lot more, and we'll get to that. But look at that. It's like $88,000 is what that's actually like. You save $100 a month to then finally have 88,000 in today's dollars. By the way, when you live on 3% of that, that's less than $3,000 a year. It's crappy. Speaking of that, I mentioned inflation, 2% inflation. They keep telling you that's what it is, 3% inflation. Guys, go to shadowstats.com. Check out shadowstats.com. This guy actually was doing models for airlines basing on inflation and literally like the revenue per seat, like per passenger. He was figuring that out. And all of a sudden, starting about the late 70s going to early 80s, his model didn't work anymore. Why? Because the government started messing with the real inflation rate, starting from the Carter administration all the way through, and every president's done it. Every president has manipulated it to the point where inflation is not really the real inflation rate anymore. He's actually saying that the inflation rate is closer to more like 7 to 9% a year, not 2. Imagine this. Imagine you're like, man, I finally got the 8% return in the stock market, and then you find out that the inflation rate's 8%. Are you ever really getting ahead? Of course not, right? So again, arguably, I go conservative on this. I say 4 or 5%. Even then, you start to realize it's a really big uphill battle for you, right? They always tell you it's like, hey, it's just rate time, minus taxes, minus inflation, all that kind of stuff. They tell you is how you create wealth. That's kind of true, but it's kind of bold too because they have all these faulty assumptions. That's one of them. How about set and forget it? You're in it for the long haul, right? If the market ever goes down, they just say, you know what? Just don't even look at it. If the market's going up or down, just don't look at it. Ignore it. When does that ever work for you in your life? Whenever you ever got to a place where you ignored something and it got better? What happens if you ignore your dental hygiene, your teeth? Do you think your teeth get better? No. Whatever you ignore, you lose, don't you? You ignore your family. You think you're going to have a family much longer? You ignore your health. You ignore the signs like, oh, boy, my left side's going numb there. It kind of hurts. Oh, well, I'll just ignore that. That's the thing. Financial advisors always tell you to set it, forget it. Just don't even look at it because they don't want you to freak out on them whenever the market goes down. They want to just have peace and just know. And I know because I was one of them. They just want you to be able to trust them. I know I would we would be trained all the time to tell people they lack the 3 T's. The 3 T's are the lack of time, training, and temperament. Because you're too emotional, you don't have the time to learn it, and you're just too dumb. So you should just trust me, right? You don't even know what you're doing. So just trust me. I'm the expert. The truth is, as a financial advisor, I'm just guessing. You think that we did anything special as financial advisors? Even if you study the markets and everything else, you are literally just guessing. Even if you find a market, like a market fund, right? You find a money market or a money fund, or let me get this right. Find a mutual fund, right? You find a mutual fund money manager you like. Guess what? Just because they're great the last 10 years doesn't mean the next 10 years they're great. I saw this in 1999. There was Janus funds that were out there. Nobody hardly even talks about Janus anymore. But Janus funds, 1999, I remember one of those funds did 128% that year. 128%. Oh, you can guarantee that we were hyping that sucker up. Those following 10 years, they didn't do jack squat, right? Nothing. It was crap. It's because they were very tech heavy. That was part of the problem. We're seeing that today, aren't we? A lot of tech heavy mutual funds and even the S&P 500 is tech heavy, right? But again, set and forget it. You're in it for the long haul. Here's the thing I think is absolute robbery. As a financial advisor, you know what? It's just so, I believe it's unethical. It may not be illegal, but it's unethical. Is that financial advisors make money whether you make money or not. We were talking to someone who was looking to hire us just the other day. He had about $900,000 with his financial advisor. A financial advisor is charging 1.5%. Very typical. You get charged between 1% and 2% a year for a financial advisor, right? Well, managing his money was 1.5%. Do the math. $900,000, 1.5%. This guy's paying roughly about $13,000, $14,000 a year, right? And that's every year. And I asked him. I said, "Listen, what if the market drops 20%? You're going to lose almost $200,000, right? So now you're down to like $700,000. How much does your financial advisor lose?" He did the math. It's like nothing. He still makes over $10,000 a year, right? You pay him $10,000 plus a year for him to guess for something you could do on your own. Literally, he's guessing. And you think that's fair? You think that's right? Oh, he put it that way. No, I'm like, yeah. Like, by the way, you pay us for 1 year and we make you way more money than that. And it's not year after year that way. It's just ridiculous. Like when I get people that have like large amounts of money, it's like, this is a no brainer. We can do way better for you than any financial advisor can do for you, especially because there's alternatives outside of that. But again, the guy's like, well, yeah, but this financial advisor, like, he cares about me. Maybe he does, but he still doesn't mean he knows anything that's going on. He's literally just putting you in funds and guessing that something's going to work out. That's the problem. They tell you set it and forget it because they want you to put it in there. Don't look at it until it's too late. All in the meantime, the next 20, 30, 40 years, that financial advisor is getting paid those guaranteed fees. They're not taking high risk, get high returns, are they? That's another lie I didn't put in here. But high risk creates high returns. When did a higher chance of losing equal a higher chance of winning? When did a 90% chance of losing equal a 90% chance of winning? It doesn't, does it? Yeah, common sense will tell you a higher chance of losing is a higher chance of losing, period. Not a higher chance of winning. So when they tell you high risk create high returns, they're telling you that so that you take all the risk while they don't take any of it. The financial institutions don't put their own money in the stock market because they're not stupid. They won't do that. They'll let you do that. They won't. The financial advisors, some of them will put money in the market, of course, but they know they're fine because they're making money off of you, whether you make money or not. That's the problem. And again, the only casualty here, the only person that suffers is you. Because at the end, you get to the end of those 20, 30, 40 years, you realize, well, now I don't have enough. What am I going to do? You're going to be just like my dad who said, man, I've been packing away money like crazy. Shouldn't I be financially free? Should I be able to retire at this point? Sorry, Dad, even though you're in your 60s, you can't. By the way, just so you know, as an update, he actually had to work into his 70s before he was forced into retirement due to health reasons. Forced into retirement. He had to work into his 70s. There are actually people out there right now, even mutual fund money managers, saying you should be working into your 70s anyways. I have no problem if you want to work into your 70s. I might actually work into my 70s. Notice I'm still working, even though I have over 50,000 a month coming in passive income. Still, the reason that I actually keep doing this is because I love what I do. This is important to me. I want to make sure that you're protected. So when you have that kind of thing, it's like, yeah, sure, maybe you want to work in your 70s, but isn't it nice to know that you have the option, that you don't have to, that you work optional, you work because you want to, not because you have to. He didn't have that choice. So be careful of these little lies that they tell you. You know, like I mentioned with the stock market, right? You know, you set it and forget it. Here's the problem, guys, is that when you put that money in there and you put it and you just let it ride, is it going to be enough? Right? I'll show you. Here's another kind of sacred cow, so to speak, right? About the 401k. The 401k, I tell you, is like the number one myth. I didn't put it as a lie here, but it's really a big myth about that is the way to save. And so I want to show you this because this is actually running real calculations because many people think, well, I get 100% match. That's 100% rate of return. That's easy money. Why wouldn't I do it? And that's like the number one argument for 401k. Nobody will argue that 401ks make them more money. They just argue they get the match. By the way, if you're a business owner and paying your own match, you're not getting jack squat. You're just paying more money for nothing. But here's the problem, guys. Fidelity. Fidelity's got over 45 million account holders. Just 401ks alone, they get over 24 million Americans in their 401ks. That's about roughly almost 10% of the population just within a 401k with Fidelity. Of those, just so you're aware, only just over 500,000 of those 24 million actually have over $1 million. But here's the problem. Fidelity, I started looking at their target date mutual funds, the ones that most people, especially millennials, are actually putting their money into, and even Gen Xers and like myself are putting money into these target date funds. Hey, my target date for retirement is 2055. It's 2035, whatever it is. And you try to put in those funds because then you have to think about it. Financial advisors love this, right? This is why I love it as a financial advisor. We had risk questionnaires we give you based on the amount of risk you're willing to take. It's like, here's the mutual fund mix you should be doing. And that's it. Done. You know, no real brain power involved. Well, in these 401k target date funds, I went and looked at the real numbers. They underperformed the stock market in the last 10 years because they haven't been around that long, but about 10 years. The last 10 years, they've underperformed the stock market by 2.1%, over 2%. So remember, you know, when I showed you here, the stock market, right? When I showed you the stock market being, oops, go back here. There we go. You know, when I showed you the stock market being like at 8.74%, remember, this doesn't include fees, right? You also have 401k fees. You might think, oh, it's fine because you know, I don't pay a financial advisor for it. No, you don't. But they have what administrative fees called 12B1 fees. They can go anywhere from roughly about 0.7% all the way up to over 2% a year. That's not counted into your equation for returns of the market. So think about this. If the market's average about, say, 8.74%, let's just say we take away 0.75, that's now down to 8%. Take away another 2, you're down to about 6. I showed you 5.25% because the truth is you're probably not even getting market returns anyways. So 5.25%, notice that even with a match, see on the left-hand side, you put in 10,000 a year into the S&P, making that 8%, let's just say, right, in this example, you have about $2.7 million, almost 2.8. But let's just say you get a 100% match. You put in 10,000 plus the 10,000 they match you. That's 20,000 you're going in. You did not get a 100% rate of return. By the way, if you put in 108% rate of return of the stock market for 10,000 a year that you're putting in, you'll find out you'll be richer than Bezos in 20 years. And I can assure you, I've never seen anybody get on that, Life of Hard Knocks guy where he's like interviewing people on the streets, like, how'd you become a millionaire or a billionaire? No one's ever said, I saved money in my 401k. I put away that $100 a month. I put away that 10,000 a year, and I became a multi-trillionaire, and you can too. That's never happened, guys, because of this. Notice, even with 20,000 and with a less return, the worst performance, I put it by 2.75% less than the other example to make it really kind of conservative here for that sense. Notice it's less. You have tens of thousands less than if you actually had just done your own investing. So I tell people all the time, you could actually probably do better on your own than you would getting a full 100% match from your company, which, by the way, I know a lot of you, especially if you're saving a lot because you're high income earners, you're not even getting a 100% match on your money, are you? You're getting a lot less. That means you're getting worse return than if you just did this on your own because you're hoping that free money is going to bail you out. And it doesn't. Just like it didn't bail out my dad, it will not bail you. All right. So I've been going to these myths. Are you guys with me so far here? Like, just type in the chat. Type in the comments to say, hey, I'm still here. Anything that's been a big epiphany, put it in there in the chat. I would love to hear like what you've gotten so far because we got some more of these things coming up. By the way, it takes me about a minute for me to see it. So I'm going to keep rolling. But if you get little ahas, type in the comments. I want to hear about what's like really sticking out to you when we're talking about this. 4% rule. You guys ever heard this? Is that whatever you have in money, you can live on 4% a year forever, right? So that 4% rule came, this wasn't a rule. This is the guy that did his Monte Carlo simulations, but he did it from 1926 to 1976. And he found out that if you had money invested anytime during that 50-year period from 1926 to 1976, guess what? You can pull off 4% a year and not run out of money. However, here's the deal, guys. Did you know that one, we were taking off the gold standard in 74, inflation has been higher, which means it's harder to do so. Also, we're living longer. So this number's already been updated. Now it's closer to about 3%, right? I'm trying to remember if I had that. Oops, I have that here. Yep, there it is. It's more of a 3% rule, right? In fact, George Kamel, he's the co-host with Dave Ramsey on The Ramsey Show. George Kamel actually came out saying, hey, you should only be pulling off 3%. A caller called in to Dave Ramsey, said, well, I'm getting really worried. I don't think I'm going to make it because if I only pull off 3% a year, I won't do it. And then, of course, Ramsey's like, what? Wait, what are you talking about? You can pull off 8% a year. If you make 12%, you can pull off 8% forever. And the guy said, well, George just said on his video that should only pull off 3%. And now I'm worried it's not enough. And of course, Dave Ramsey ripped him a hole. George actually went and reneged on that. Danielle, I agree. The 4% rule is a joke. And that's the thing, guys. Like, that rule has been way outdated. Right now, there are companies that still update every year. Like a lot of the large financial institutions, it is about 3% is the new rule. The new rule should be more like 3%, not 4%. That's if you're retiring in your mid-60s. Here's the problem I get. I get these people in the FIRE movement, right? Financially independent, retire early. I was actually in the Facebook group for a short time until I started dropping some truth bombs because these people I thought there would be like me, people that actually did it. And instead, there were people that had money in mutual funds. They were usually single, young millennials that really had low expenses. So they lived very, very cheap, minimalist lifestyle, which I'm not opposed to, by the way. I'm actually totally cool with that. The first time I got out of the rat race, I only needed $3,500 a month to live on. It wasn't as hard, right? But and see, David, you're saying now if you want to retire early, you're exactly right. So if you want to retire early, it's even less than that. And I remember seeing that some stats even this morning, looking at see what other companies have been saying. And they're like, well, if you're trying to retire early at quote unquote 55 years old, retire early, which I think is retiring still later. They say now it's closer to about 2% or 2.5%. And I was like, Well, if you want to retire early, like these people are, they're saying 4% rule. They're like, well, if I save $1 million in my mutual funds, 4% is 40,000 a year. But here's the thing: if it's 3% for your older, it's only 30,000 a year, which is why so many people in retirement aren't retiring very well. But on top of that, too, is that I've told people, and I told just a friend the other day, he's 30 years old. He did save up just over $1 million. He's like, yep, I can live on 40,000 a year and be fine. I said, well, the only problem is for you at 30, it's a 2% rule, not 4%. He's like, wait, are you saying I've got to save up double now of what I have? I said, yeah. I'm like, you've done an amazing job for a 30-year-old. Incredible that you've actually saved up over $1 million. He's a business owner, so he's been packing a lot of money away. But you can't live on 4% forever, especially if you're putting the money in the stock market. No way. If you're pulling out money when the market goes down, that double whammy there, you'll never recover from that. Like that's why the Monte Carlo simulations will say for you it's 2%. He's like, I don't believe it. No, I refuse. Like you don't have to believe it or not, see, David, you're right on it, man. It's like you are telling my future here, So exactly. It's more like 2%. And so that's the thing is like they have this 4% rule, but in truth, you really can't do that. And then remember, we got to factor in inflation. We got to factor in that people live longer. By the way, if you make it to age 65, if both of you, if you're married at your age 65 or older right now, one of the two of you have almost a 100% chance you'll make it to age 92. That means you got almost 30 years to let that money last. I actually ran simulations of Dave Ramsey's 8%. I did this on a podcast last year. If you guys aren't following my Money Ripples podcast, please do so. But I ran those simulations of pulling out 8% in about 15 years or so, just doing the average of market, like with 2 years up, 1 year down. That's all I was doing. Just the typical 2 steps forward, 1 step back. They call it the Wall Street waltz, right? Still averaging 8%. Guess what happened? You ran out of money in about 15 to 20 years in using Dave Ramsey's example, because of course he doesn't give a crap. He's completely oblivious. By the way, if Dave Ramsey, if this is so true, why doesn't Dave Ramsey pull all his money in the stock market? Because Dave Ramsey's all of his wealth tied up in his business and his real estate. That's where he's putting his money. Why wouldn't we just do what he's doing himself? So again, coming back to reality, that's the thing. Appreciate that. Here's the link, if you want to see the podcast on YouTube, the Money Ripples with Chris Miles, you can actually see it there. So, all right, moving on here. Okay, diversify. You ever heard you should be diversified? I remember I did this firsthand myself. I sat down with my brother-in-law who came from a wealthy family. He's second generation. And as I prepared for this, I spent hours, kind of like I was preparing for you guys. I spent hours preparing for him to show him why mutual funds are awesome and why I'm smarter than him about money, even though I was way broker than him, because that's what financial brokers are, right? They're broker than you and I are. And so anyways, I was preparing. I got my suit pressed and dry cleaned and everything. I even brought the best guy from my office to back me up so we could double team him. As I sat down with him, he said, all right, Chris, let's just say that I give you $10,000 to play with. You're saying you can make me 12%, right? Remember the 12% thing? And I said, well, I can't guarantee it. Past performance is not indicative of future results. Always a disclaimer to go with financial advisors, right? You never have to promise anything. And so I said, well, no, but yeah, that's what history's shown. It's done about 12%. He's like, okay, let's just say I do that. That's $1,200 in a year. But Chris, do you realize I can take $10,000, put a down payment on a semi truck, sell it through my dealership, and turn around and make a $20,000 profit in just a couple months? So $20,000 in a couple months versus your maybe $1,200 in a year. Why would I invest with you? And I said, well, you should be diversified. You shouldn't pull all your eggs in that one basket. Business is risky after all, even though I was in business, and business is where he made all of his money. But I was like, no, you shouldn't do that. Why did I say that? Because diversify is really just telling you to put your money into my stuff. That's really what I was saying. If I were really being honest, like, no, because I don't get paid commissions. I don't get paid the fee if you put your money in your business. So put it with me. That's what I was really, what I should have said if I was being 100% honest with him. Luckily, he saw through that. He sent me with my tail between my legs and said, go run home, little boy. You don't know anything about money. And that's the thing is like, we always tell you to diversify, but are you really diversified when you invest in mutual funds? Now, understand that there's 4 asset classes. There's things like commodities, gold, silver, oil and gas, right? Corn, soybeans, all that kind of stuff, right? Oranges, if you ever watched Trading Spaces or Trading Places in the 80s with Eddie Murray, right? And Dan Aykroyd, or Eddie Murphy, sorry. I am getting all tongue tied. I'm actually recovering from a food poisoning right now as we speak. But anyways, Eddie Murphy, Dan Aykroyd, Trading Places, when they actually did all this commodity trading and stuff, right? Commodities is one. You've also got things like business. Business, when you actually invest in business, not stocks, but business, That's an investment. Real estate is another asset class. And then the fourth one are paper assets. Guess which one of these four financial advisors put you in 100%? You got it, paper assets. Paper assets. That's why if you even get in stocks and bonds, it's possible you might watch both of them tank at the same time. That happened in 2022. That happened in the last recession. People were like, wait, I was supposed to be safe if I'm in bonds versus stocks. That's why I watered it all down with this spreading my risk out and diversifying. And then I still lost money. Right. Because you're not diversified. If you were truly diversified, you wouldn't. That's the thing. Financial advisors can only offer you what they offer you. The reason they tell you to put your money there and they tell you to diversify is just among stuff that they get paid for, which is only paper assets. It's mutual funds, stocks and mutual funds, stocks and bonds, those kind of things. That's it. Here's the problem, guys, is that if you look at the S&P 500, even if you're saying, well, I don't go with financial advisors, I'm smarter than that. Okay, the S&P 500, you realize the Magnificent Seven. These are the top 7 stocks of the 500 in the S&P 500. And just so you know, these top 7 stocks, 2 of which are both Google. So really, there's only 6 companies out of the 500. And look right here, see 2024, over a third of the value of the S&P. That means of these 6 stocks, the S&P is determined by these 6 companies. You're not diversified at all. In fact, you're taking high risk. We had one client that she had literally like money in Google and Meta because she worked for Google, but she also had all these stocks in Meta. That's why she came to us. She's like, I'm not diversified. It's all tech heavy. If that tanks 20%, I lose hundreds of thousands of dollars overnight, right? You're not diversified when you're in the S&P 500 at all. It used to be that way. It's not that way anymore. It's heavy based on how big these companies are. And guess what? Almost all of them are in mostly tech only. What happens if this AI boom becomes an AI bust? Now, I'm not saying AI is going away, but what if all of a sudden the stock values have gone ridiculously high, even when there's not even been AI there? There doesn't have to be any money being made, and people are still throwing money at these companies, hoping there's something big. What if it ends up being a disappointment? What if it's not as big as they think it is? Like what happened in Y2K with the tech companies, and all of a sudden they came crashing down because you didn't have to make money in tech companies in 1999. You just had to say you're a tech company, they would throw money at you. But then when everything got back into balance and order, people lost a lot of money. People lost their retirement savings because of that. You don't think we're in that same kind of position again? You don't think this is almost like the 1990s all over again? Come on. All right, another lie. Investing is stocks, right? I kind of mentioned this. Like they always tell you that because, again, they only make money there. When I had licenses, like my Series 6 and Series 63, I was licensed to sell you. It doesn't mean I was licensed as a professional, like an expert in any way, shape, or form. I was literally licensed to sell any of those things. CFP, it doesn't matter if you're CFP or a CFA, doesn't matter. All of these things are really licensed to sell you stuff. And it's all based on stocks because who does the financial advisor actually work for? It's the financial companies. Every time it's the financial institutions that you work for. That's who you're with. That's the problem. Here's another lie. Compound interest is the 8th wonder of the world. I would tell people that Einstein said this. I looked up the quote. Einstein never said it. The only time I could find it on a website was on a financial advisor website or network marketing. I don't know why network marketing sites had it, but apparently they did. The compounding interest, the 8th wonder of the world, is a complete lie. It is not the 8th wonder of the world because here's the thing. You can compound interest all day long. So what? You know how many times we get people reaching out to us saying, Chris, I've saved up hundreds of thousands of dollars. I even saved into the millions, yet I'm still stuck at work. It doesn't do anything for me. I'm essentially asset rich, cash poor. Yay, I've got a paid off house. Woo, I've got all this land. Maybe I got real estate, but I'm not earning income from it. Therefore, it doesn't mean no good. That's why I tell people, like, it doesn't matter. I already mentioned the stats here. This is 2023, 45 million account holders between IRAs and 401ks, 810,000. Now it's over 950,000 have at least $1 million. But look at this. The Transamerica poll in 2023, when they polled these people, said, how do you feel about retirement? 35% of just this less than 2%, right? 35% said it would take a miracle to retire. Why? Going back to that previous one we talked about, right? You want to try to retire, it's more like a 3% rule. Well, if you have $1 million, you live on 3%, that's 30,000 a year. Do you realize you're living below the poverty line? That's not a living. Most people I talk to usually want at least 100,000 a year, especially with today's inflation and everything else. Most people say, I want at least 100,000 a year. Well, if you want 100,000 a year, you're living on 3%, that 3% rule instead. That means you get to have about $3.33 million saved. $3.33 million saved. Now, what percent do you think actually has that much? Not many. Just so you know, I actually looked at another statistic just this morning of Gen Xers like myself. Now, Gen Xers, understand we're between our mid 40s to about early to mid 60s right now. And of the Gen Xers, those that have saved for at least 15 years, the same Fidelity stats updated in 2024 now. Of those Gen Xers, the average balance is just under $600,000. So think about it. There's a lot of Gen Xers that are on the verge of retirement right now or getting close to it, and the average balance is just under 600,000. Take 3% of that. That means you're living on less than 18,000 a year. That's less than $1,500 a month. And if you have a 401k, guess what? You got to pay taxes on that, don't you? So now you pull off that 18,000 a year or 1,500 a month, and you got to pay taxes. You're likely to walk away with maybe $1,200 a month. How many of you right now watching this, how many of you think are actually excited to live on $1,200 a month after you pay your taxes? I hope it's like none of you. Okay. And we had one person said, boo, right? That's the problem, guys. So you got to save up into the millions to do that. It's just horrible. Oh yeah, there's that article I took right off of CNN that just came out last month, right? Leslie says, not me. That's not what I want. Exactly, right? This is the thing. It's like I always tell people, like, it's so fascinating that these are the stats, right? And I can talk about stats all day long. You guys, it won't do anything good for you. You have to see it in your own life. You have to be able to open your eyes and look around and say, is this reality for me? Because think about it. If you're looking at a restaurant, you're like, hey, should I try this restaurant? And you see that almost every review is a 1-star review. Will you go to that restaurant? No, right? Maybe you're adventurous. Maybe you're like, I like to live life on the edge. I'm going to that 1-star restaurant. I hope I get food poisoning from this place, right? Trust me, I'm dealing with it right now. It's not fun. But if that's the case, you wouldn't go. You wouldn't even waste your money on that for the most part. Anybody that's sane, unless, like I said, you're a real rebel, right? You're not going to do it. Why do we do it with financial advisors, even though we already know 401ks haven't worked? Financial advisors still don't get those results because they get even worse than people getting a 401ks. If it hasn't worked, why do we keep doing it? I'll tell you why. Because people tell me, well, Chris, I do it because I'm a conservative investor. Like, I do what's safe. It's like, no, you're taking high risk. You're gambling. You're not going to make this work. You're a gambler. You're a comfortable saver, not a conservative investor. You're a comfortable saver. You're just packing money away and saving it. That's what you're doing. Here's a few bonus slides. Dollar cost averaging. You ever heard this? You got to just keep putting your money in, whether the market goes up or down. Doesn't that sound like a fascinating and just brilliant sales technique? Hey, if the market's going down, buy more. It's on sale. But if it goes up, well, don't stop buying because it's going up, right? You notice for financial advisors, it's never a bad time to buy in the stock market. Here's the problem with this. Like, they give you the examples like this, right? I even have a paper too that I show people 3 different examples. I would show them, hey, look, if the market goes down, then comes back up, you make more money, just like this one. It's like shows the total returns 25% versus 12 or whatever, right? Here's the thing though. Really what it is like they're telling you buy low, sell high. Well, if that's the case, why am I buying when the market looks like this? Think about the last 16 years. It's just been going up, right? You haven't been dollar cost averaging at all. You're just buying as it gets more and more expensive. Wouldn't you be better off to wait for a market crash and then throw money in? Which, by the way, if I ever see a huge market crash where it should be, the S&P 500 is like about 6,000 right now is where the S&P 500 is. Do you realize that the norm or where it should be is just over 2,000? Imagine if you watch that market, you watch your retirement accounts drop by over 50%, maybe even 60% over the next couple of years. Would you be thinking differently about this? The problem is that you guys, anybody, and this is especially true of, I know people that are like younger, especially millennials, like my friend who thought he could live on 4%. The thing is, you've never seen a down market really. You've never seen it go down. This has been the best run we've seen over the last 15, 16 years of history. So of course it looks amazing. But understand that dollar cost averaging works way better when you just buy when it's low. Wait for the market to crash and then just save up some money and stuff it in. You'd be better off. You'd make way more money and then let it ride. But of course, what do they tell you? They say, well, you're not smart enough. You can't time the market that well. The best way to time the stock market is to get in when nobody else wants to be in. That's when you know it's the right time to get the stock market. Is when everybody else poo-poos all over it, including the media. That would be the time to get in. Nobody's poo-pooing on it for the last several years because, again, the market just keeps going up. You're only buying what's getting more expensive. You're actually doing the example they say not to do when it just keeps going up, the bull market. It's been in a long 16-year bull market. Congratulations. When's the time you're going to actually wake up and say, no, that's not the reality. I shouldn't be doing that just because these guys are telling me to do that crap. Another bonus slide, net worth is the best measure of wealth. I just mentioned this. So many people come to us, they're like, I've got money, but I have no income. I have to keep working each and every day. I got to keep suffering. I got to keep working my tail off because it's just not enough. I got to get it up there. I had one guy in particular that he reached out to us after seeing one of these webinars. He said, okay, Chris, I've got $3 million saved up. He's 52 years old. $3 million saved up. I'm putting away $200,000 a year. $200,000 a year he's packing away into his mutual funds. He can't even pack that much away into his IRAs, right? So he's packing all this money away. He met with his financial advisor. Now his goal is, he said, I want to live on $500,000 a year. Now the reason he wants to do that, and that's, he's like, I want freedom. I don't even want to be financially independent. I want to be free. I never have to worry about paying money again. Most people I talk to just want to make sure that they can always pay bills, right? At least always pay their bills, and then at least enjoy some of their life, visit grandkids, do the things they want to do. Maybe even like go serve and, like do volunteer projects or serve on missions and things like that. And whatever it might be, that's what they want to be doing. They want that freedom. He wanted $500,000 a year. His financial advisor says, well, if you keep saving like you are for the next 13 years and cross your fingers, the stock market doesn't crash on you, you might be able to get there. You might be able to get to $18 million by the time you're 65, because $18 million to live on that 3% would finally get him about $500,000 a year. And I told him, I said, you could wait 13 years, assuming the market doesn't go down. And he was assuming a pretty high return in the market to do that in 13 years. And I said, well, you could probably do that in a couple years, saving the way you're saving right now, but doing it different. And it's this way, it's passive income. All right, I've beat up these lies enough, but let's talk about the solution, right? What's possible here? Passive income. I love what Warren Buffett says. If you don't find a way to make money while you sleep, you will work until you die. This is what he didn't want to have happen. I mean, think about it. $3 million already saved up at 52. How many of us have $3 million saved up at 52, right? Not many Americans can say that. And still, he's told by his financial advisor, keep going, keep plugging away. And by the way, thank you so much. You're paying for my kids' college right now. Come on, that's crap. Cash flow is what really creates freedom. It's that passive income. And so I love what Jerry Seinfeld said in the Opposite George episode, where George Costanza, who's normally a loser, becomes a winner for one episode because he does the opposite. And Jerry told him, he says, well, if every instinct you have is wrong, then the opposite would have to be right. Remember, everything financial advisors have taught you up to this point hasn't worked so far. So why keep doing it? Do something different. It's acceleration, not accumulation. You're not compounding interest, you're compounding income, right? The big picture is this, is that you take the money you have, you can run it through things like max ROI, infinite banking. I'm not talking about that so much on this particular webinar. We'll do that in a few weeks. But really taking the money, getting it out of these places, get it out away from these 401ks and IRAs, get it into your possession, in your power, in your control, even if it's a simple bank savings account, and then get into passive income investments, take that income you're earning and then take it again and keep making it work. I always teach people to get lean, get liquid, and get out. Get lean, obviously, make sure that you're being a wise steward of your money. You're tracking your money. You're not blowing money left and right. I get so many high income earners. They're like, man, I make good money, but where's it all going? Right? All the more reason we got to be tracking your money. Big thing, which is what we have our clients do first and foremost. Get liquid means get your money liquid. Like I just said, don't lock it away into your house equity that you can't get to unless you have to sell it, or hopefully you can refinance it, but then you have to ask bank for permission to get to your own money. Don't lock it up there. Don't lock your money in 401ks and IRAs. And then you can get it out when you can get it liquid. Or a place to get liquid, bank savings. By the way, when you do the passive income calculator at moneyripples.com, we ask you these questions. How much do you have in bank savings? Do you have money also in like cash value life insurance? Not the term insurance, the death benefit, but the actual tax-free savings account that's inside life insurance is a tool you can use. We get so many people that have these from years ago, didn't realize they can actually use it to invest outside of just letting it sit there like their agent or their financial advisor told them to let it set it and forget it, right? No, you can actually get that money out and do something. Mutual funds, you got normal mutual funds that's sitting around that you've been doing stuff with it, stocks, bonds, things like that. Old 401ks, not the current 401k at your work, but old 401ks or IRAs that you have, Roth IRAs. These can be used to invest, to make money. You can actually roll over that money and you can have control of it versus putting it with a financial advisor. You can have control of it and get it invested almost anywhere you want in places that can make much bigger returns with less risk than the stock market. Do you have rental properties? Do you have equity in those things? What's your return on equity? I had a client who had literally had $700,000 of equity in his properties, but it was only cash flowing $200 a month. That means his equity was paying him a third of 1% a year. He'd be better off selling those properties, putting into a crappy CD with the bank. Instead, we had him actually sell it off, move it tax-free into some other properties. And now after just a few years, that 700,000 is now paying them over $8,000 a month, over 100 grand a year. Not $200 a month, 100 grand a year. And he didn't even have to pay off all his mortgages, although those are debt-free in this particular case. But still, way, way better results because we got that money out of prison. We got it liquid, right? Home equity, same kind of thing, right? You have home equity that maybe could be used to generate some passive income without any money out of your own pocket. Do you have gold, silver? Do you have crypto? You have crypto that's been running up really nicely lately. Could you capitalize on those gains and use that to now generate income? Because the crypto won't create income. Neither will the stocks and bonds or gold and silver, right? They don't create income. I had a guy that had 100 grand of gold just sitting around because he thought the dollar was going to collapse anytime. This is in 2014. He thought that. And I said, no, get it out. You can actually create cash flow now. And he finally did years later. But he lost several years because he waited around too long, right? So anyways, wrapping up here, right? Here's the investments that we talk about, passive investments we have our clients look into. And by the way, we even know people that actually offer these investments, people that I've invested with or our clients have invested with over the years that are much better trustworthy sources. Doesn't mean that we're investment advisors, but we definitely have good connections that way. Turnkey rentals. You can actually own a real estate property without really, having to manage it, deal with tenants, toilets, and trash. You have somebody else manage it while you could do that from far away. You can just be able to take the paychecks that are coming in from that rental without you having to be hands-on with it. You can lend your money. You can be a lender. You can be like the bank lending money to these guys, get a fixed rate of return, things like that. You put your money in different types of funds, not mutual funds, but funds where maybe they're more diversified among several different types of real estate, or it could be into different types of funds that way. Apartments, self-storage. You can actually do in oil and gas. Heck, if you're going to see gas prices start to go back up again, you might as well capitalize on it, right? I've got money in that. Partnerships. I got a partnership I put over $500,000 into that now is paying me over $13,000 a month right now, buying and selling raw land and things like that. Those are the kind of things you can actually be doing with this. Problem is, people think the stock market's the way to go, but it's not. They always tell you, I used to show charts just like this saying, hey, the stock market's going to pay way more than real estate. But guess what? What's the reality? This is one of my Tennessee properties from almost 6 years ago, right? Actually, no, 7 years ago, almost 7 years ago now. The same period of time, the stock market in the last almost 7 years did about 125% return. That's a 12.75% average. That's more than the typical average. While my other property also grew too. What was the difference if I had put that same money in? Because I put $32,000 down payment on that property. Now, if I had put that $32,000 in the stock market, I'd have $72,000. Not bad, right? I've more than doubled my money in almost 7 years with the stock market. However, that same $32,000 made me over $165,000 with this property between equity, cash flow, and everything else. And not just that, the cash flow is this. If I were to pull off 3% on that $72,000, I could pull off $2,160 a year. With my property, it's paying me over $8,300 per year, and I get tax benefits where I'm not paying taxes on money. I'm making now quadruple the income from that one property. Compound income, not interest. That's the important thing here. I'll tell you, we've had people do it. Like that person that had a bunch of Google stock. We actually had them we had them refinance their loans so they could free up money. Because again, we want to make sure we can bring their burn rate down. They were $22,000 a month they were spending. We got down to $18,000 a month without them having to sacrifice their lifestyle. Then we also freed up another $30,000 a year in taxes, which was pretty cool. So already before we even did anything with investing, they freed up over 75 grand a year. Then we'd have them sold a rental that can improve their cash flow and move some of their money out of their stocks, which in total potential, they didn't do all of it yet. But in total potential, that's over 600,000 a year. Not typical, obviously, but way, way better. Because again, they were just coming in for real estate. We found way more things we could do there. This woman right here, 650,000 she had to invest with, diversified in between different types of things, between oil and debt funds and a real estate fund. 76,000 a year. She just became financially independent last year doing that same thing. You even have this guy. This guy's in about almost 30 years old. He's like, hey, here's my plan, buying 1 or 2 rentals a year, getting to that $5,000 a month. And he's even using that max ROI infinite banking strategy with it to get tax-free income to go along with his rentals. So that by the time he's in his 30s, he has enough money to create $5,000 a month of passive income, which would get him financially independent, right? Again, It's cycling that money through, getting it working for you. So you have to work so hard for it. That is where cash flow creates freedom. So I mentioned my dad's that inspiration for today. Well, here's the thing. Today, guys, he's now 80 years old, going on 81 years old. He's alive, but is he really living? Like I said, he was forced out of work due to health reasons in his 70s, right? That's the problem, is that the life that he could have had in his youth, and I mean youth like in his 60s, could have happened had he made the change then, much, much sooner. Had I known it much sooner, it would have helped me too. Granted, I was able to do it for myself. For him, he's just trying to stretch out these dollars as long as he can, just trying to not use up all of his money before he's dead. He didn't think he'd be alive this long. And none of us know that. None of us know how long we're going to be here, but we don't know how long we're going to be here, right? You need to make sure you have a plan that works, whether you don't live that long. You want to have a life now and have that time with your kids now while they still want to be with you, or they still have the time to be with you and they don't have their own lives to deal with. And you also want to make sure you're taken care of in the future too. It's about now and in the future. Financial advisors always tell you about someday. It's always someday, so that there's no accountability. But that someday can be today. And you can actually create financial freedom now rather than waiting so many years. I've had so many people that have gotten laid off recently, especially if they've been in the tech sector and stuff. So grateful they have passive income coming in to allow them some time to make that adjustment. That, guys, it's all about that. What financial advisors do planning for today? They don't. Do it now, create more income now so you can have more in the future too. That's the secret. You can get there, you can take the short way or you can take the harder way, right? What's the GPS do? You want to take forever? You want to do it now? So your next step is, guys, is do this. Become work optional. If you want to do that, go to the calculator on moneyripples.com. It looks a little bit different now. We're making some updates on our site, but there's a passive income calculator. Fill that out completely. You can actually see how much passive income you could create in the next 12 months, right? Again, if you fill out correctly, don't put in your current company 401k that you can't access. Don't put that number in, but everything else, you put that in there, it gives you a pretty accurate thing. This is actually the same formulas I use in my own brain to calculate for my clients. Now my brain got put into a calculator so you can actually figure it out on your own without having to, reach out and wait for me to get back to you that way. So huge benefit there. Here's the thing, guys. The most dangerous risk of all is the risk of spending your life not doing what you want on the bet you can buy yourself the freedom to do it later. Guys, all we have is right now, right? That's all we've got. So anyways, I know time's been far past. Hopefully, I want to hear from you guys. What are some big ahas you got from this? What's something that you're able to learn and take away? Because I'm telling you guys, this is it. This is the thing. But just so you know, by the way, when you do that calculator, while I'm waiting for this question to come in, because it does take about a minute for me to see your questions pop in, I'll say this, is that calculator, the only way it works, of course, is that you got to implement on it. You got to take action with it. If you get at least a $15,000 result on that, we should be talking. That is something you could actually be doing with us. If you don't mind me indulging on this, guys, we work with clients every day. Our goal is to have 1,000 of you financially independent by 2030. 1,000 families financially independent. Not that big of a number. At the same time, that's a big number. And I'll tell you, financial advisors, I doubt you'll ever find a financial advisor who has that many clients showing that kind of financial freedom. This is why I'm the anti-financial advisor, right? Because the truth is, it's just not happening. So anyways, I know I just realized what time it is. I got to actually jump on to another podcast interview that I'm supposed to be on right now. But if you have questions, you can always reach out to us. There's also a contact us page for questions that follow up from this. But again, if we can be of service any way for you, any shape or form, this is why we do what we do. This is why I haven't fully just gone and retired, because I know I want you to have the life that I've been able to enjoy. But guys, you can't do it. You can't do it just doing the same thing you've done the whole time. It just doesn't work. It hasn't worked. Why would you expect it to work in the future? It hasn't worked the last 40 years. Why would it work over the next 40 years? Don't be one of these casualties, these numbers, that the other 98, 99% that doesn't become financially free. You need to make sure you make that change today. It doesn't just happen from you just sitting around doing nothing. You've got to make that change now. So anyways, guys, appreciate your time. Yes, I love the aha moments about becoming liquid. That's definitely a big thing there. Again, Chris, thanks for showing up to here as well. Guys, make it a great day. Let us know how we can best serve you. We'll see you later.